Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today's video is going to be on omega-6 facts. Are they making you sick? We're going to dive into the omega-6, kind of what the take-home information about that is. And again, if you guys have experience in using omega-6 fatty acids or restricting your diet and different feedback or results, put your comments down below. Before we do, please smash that like button. Really helps the search algorithm. Put your comments down below as well. All right, so first off, fatty acids, really important. What are they? Nothing more than a hydroxyl group followed by a string of different carbons, okay? And again, usually the carbons are going to have single bonds if they're saturated fats, because the carbons are essentially saturated. They only have 4 spots to bind to different molecules. And if it's saturated, right, all 4 spots are full. That's called a saturated fatty acid. If we put a double bond in between those carbons at any point, that makes the fat either, monounsaturated if there's only one double bond, or polyunsaturated, which just means many double bonds. We'll kind of look at the science here in a second. Just put up a couple of visuals so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, first off, here's your saturated fatty acid, right? See the carbon right here? So we have this carbon, this hydroxyl group. We have carbon, bond to carbon, bond to carbon, bond to carbon. You can see single bonds all in between. These carbons are saturated, hence saturated fatty acids. So saturated fatty acids get the name from the actual chemical structure. Now, as soon as we start to add one double bond, now that's considered a monounsaturated fatty acid. So now instead of it being saturated, it's mono, meaning one, and now it's unsaturated. So now the carbons start to lack their full 4 bonds across the board, with the exception being like the outer tip here at the start. Hope that makes sense out of the gates. And so when you look at saturated fatty acids, the little white dots here, these are just all carbons. The blues are the hydrogens. That's how it looks, except, with the exception being the end. And then you can see when you start to add an unsaturated fatty acid, you throw a double bond there. And then again, where that double bond is will tell you if it's an omega-6 or an omega-3. All right. So if it's on that 3rd carbon, it would be an omega-3. If it's on the 6th carbon, it's an omega-6. All right. Now, why does that matter? So if you look at these group here, you have this methyl end here, right? Methyl is a CH3. So the white's a carbon, 1, 2, 3. So it happens right between the 3rd and the 4th. That makes it an omega-3 fatty acid. And when you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this makes it an omega-6 fatty acid. So this is kind of how the fats are how we know what they are, what the structure is. If not, we just kind of know it as, usually omega-3 good, omega-6 bad. Well, this kind of gives you a little bit more insight. Now, let's go look at metabolic pathway. So omega-6, right? Why is an omega-6 fatty acid kind of unique? Well, omega-6 fatty acids, the farther down the chain and the more double bonds we have, the more fragile those fats are. And so that can be problematic. And so your polyunsaturated fatty acids like fish oil can be good, especially when they come from fish. But when we start to take a lot of the plant fats, whether it's safflower, canola, peanut, right? The more processing that is involved in extracting these fatty acids, guess what happens? The more the fats get damaged. So that's really important to think about. So you have things like olive oil, avocado oil, especially if they're cold pressed, maybe a little bit easier to extract, right? So those are on the unsaturated fatty acid side. Then you have your polyunsaturated fatty acids. This could be your canola. This could be your safflower, right? And again, the processing there tends to be more extreme, more heat. So these fats tend to be more oxidized. And the omega-6 content in these fatty acids tend to be higher. And so omega-6 tends to drive down an inflammatory pathway. So if you look here, the big thing you want to focus on, omega-6, we have linoleic acid goes to arachidonic acid. And then these can flow down to your prostaglandin E2. So all you really have to focus on is this side here. The prostaglandin E2 drives more of the inflammation. You have some other inflammation pathways down here in the different LOX pathways. You can see red is going to be pro-inflammatory. Green's going to be anti-inflammatory. Okay. So again, it says inflammation resolving. Just know that. Just think of anti-inflammatory. So you can see driving down the omega-3 side of the highway here, a lot more anti-inflammatory. Driving down the omega-6 side of the highway, you're going to see a lot more 6 and inflammation. Now, again, it's a little bit contradicting here because when you see a lot of arachidonic acid, doesn't a lot of meat go down that pathway? Yeah, and again, the composition of the meat will shift if you're consuming lots of grain or corn-based animal products. And so if it's more grass-fed, you're going to have more gamma linoleic acid here. You're going to have more EPA. You're going to have more fats that are going to be more neutral or more anti-inflammatory. So the composition of the animal protein and animal fats shifts when it's grass-fed or more pasture-fed. When animals eat their natural diets, the fatty acid profile tends to shift to a more anti-inflammatory one. And why is that? Well, think about it. How do animals get factory farmed? They're typically eating more soy and more grains, and those tend to have more omega-6, so that fatty acid accumulates in the muscle, in the actual composition of the protein on the animals. And this is why, even though you see omega-6 and you see arachidonic acid, you may say, well, let's stay away from animal products. But if you choose pasture-fed sources, you're going to be in good shape. Same thing with like egg yolks. That's going to definitely have some omega-3 there and some DHA, EPA in the egg yolk. So that's going to actually support more of that anti-inflammatory side. So I hope that makes sense there. And so we kind of talked about the naming of the omega-6 and the omega-3, what that's all about. I think that makes a lot of sense. We talked about the inflammatory pathways driving the omega-6, prostaglandin, and some of the LOX pathways, and some of the anti-inflammatory over here, which is going to be the PG3. These are known as eicosanoids. It's also a prostaglandin 1 as well. They're not showing it on here, but prostaglandin 1 is also anti-inflammatory as well. And again, your EPA, DHA fats are really important because these are really anti-inflammatory. This is what's in fish oil. And then DHEA is very brain building. So very helpful brain inflammation to really get the DHA fats up there significantly. Excellent, excellent. And so you can see the omega-6. Oh, let me just pop this one up here. You can see the omega-6 side, your linoleic, your arachidonic acid, and what it's forming. And then you can see the omega-3 as well. And again, if you're getting omega-3 from things like flaxseed or ALA, alpha linolenic acid, guess what? You don't have a great conversion there. So a lot of vegetarians or vegans thinking, hey, I'm going to work on getting my omega-3s from more vegetable-based sources, tends to not convert maybe at 5 or 10% level. And the more insulin resistant and inflamed you are, that conversion will not happen. So you want to be using downstream fatty acids that you're going to get in egg yolks, grass-fed meat, and of course, high quality fish as well. Salmon, skipjack tuna, those things are excellent. And then you can see the type of fats here, right? So you can see your polyunsaturated fats are going to be corn, fish as well. But again, what's the difference, right? The difference is the extraction process, right? So this oil tends to get damaged and the extraction process tends to be very oxidizing, damaging it. Also, corn tends to have a lot of GMO, a lot of Roundup type of effect there. Same with safflower and soy. Sesame has some decent effects there. Again, you can get away with, some sesame, some nuts and seeds if your diet's pretty good. Like you want that at least 1-to-1. Even 4-to-1, omega-6 to omega-3 is still decent, right? But you want that 1-to-1 or 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. Today, we're 16 or even 20 omega-6 to omega-3. And then you see some of the monounsaturated tend to be a little bit better, right? With the exception of canola. There's an excellent video here. If you go on to YouTube, type in canola oil extraction. It is pretty insane, this video. Yeah, but I mean, you want to see canola oil in process and what the extraction process looks like. It is just nasty. So they're heating it, they're boiling it. There's a massive amount of filtration. Look at the sludge that comes out right here. I mean, it is just, they have to heat it, they have to bleach it. Obviously, it comes back in this nasty color, so they have to filter all that junk out. So you can just see all the processing that happens on the canola oil side. I recommend take 4 minutes or 5 minutes and watch the video, and just don't do it while you're eating. You can see, right? Look at the color and how it comes out. Wow, crazy. So take a look at that video. Definitely worth watching it. Okay, good. Excellent, guys. All right, so what's the take home here, right? So every single cell in your body has a lipid bilayer, and that cell membrane is going to communicate with other cells. And we need good, healthy cell membranes, and part of that is good fats. Good kind of rule of thumb is at least half your fats from saturated sources, right? Saturated fats are the carbons that have all the hydrogens in between, right? Real fast again, little recap. These are your saturated fats right here, right? Carbon, hydrogen, hydroxyl, right? Carbon, all saturated with the hydrogen on the end, right? These are going to be your coconut oil. This is your grass-fed butter. This is going to be your healthy tallow, grass-fed meat, right? These are going to be all those healthy animal fats. Very good because one, they don't oxidize, very stable. You saw the shelf life of the canola oil there, maybe a year, right? You're going to have super long-term with saturated fats, right? And so very good anti-inflammatory as well. Also helps feed some of your gut bacteria, very supporting for your gut microbiome. And then on the unsaturated side, I think your good reputable brands of olive oil that's cold pressed extra virgin. Again, there's some counterfeiting there. Some cut it with canola oil. We'll put some websites online that give you some good reputable brand options on the olive or avocado. I think palm's also pretty decent. That's more on the saturated fat side. And then, of course, any of your tallows, whether it's beef or duck or any pork fat, all really good, especially if the quality of those animals is good. And so if you're going to do on the omega-6, where you're doing maybe some walnuts, some sesame, right? I think that's fine, especially if you don't have a lot of pain or inflammation in your body, that's fine. And as long as you're kind of at that, 1-to-1 ratio of the good quality, healthy animal fats. And again, we'll put fish in there as well. Now, fish oil is obviously going to be better consumed when you're consuming that wild Alaskan sockeye, that high quality fish, right? Fry it up in some butter or some coconut oil. That's great. Again, if you're consuming fish oil in a supplement form, that's still good too. Just make sure it's high quality because a lot of these fish oils are highly oxidized. Also, if you get a ton of polyunsaturated fats, again, they can be very unstable. And so if you consume them, usually you want to make sure they're good brands where they're testing them. Maybe they're putting a little bit of rosemary or vitamin E inside of them to kind of stabilize them. If you're consuming higher levels of omega-3 in a supplement form, let's say higher than 2 to 3 grams a day, you probably want some extra vitamin C or some curcumin supplemented in your diet just to deal with any of the lipid peroxidation and oxidation from those omega-3 fatty acids. But again, good quality fish in wild Alaskan sockeye, right? I'll put a link here for Vital Farms. They're excellent. Vital Farms or Vital Choice, really good, high quality pasture fed salmon or sockeye. Keep the skin on. There's a lot of omega-3 in the actual skin. There's a lot of monounsaturated fat in just like your chicken skin. Really good though, excellent fat. Again, it's going to be the processing of it isn't there, and so because it's not processed, like you saw with the canola, you're not going to have all this oxidation and rancidification. And so the less the fats are processed and the more you can access them, right, the better it is. The better it's going to be for everyone. I hope that helps. So if you want to improve your health, look at really getting your fats dialed in. Animal fats, grass-fed meat, egg yolks, excellent. Butter or ghee, excellent options. Coconut oil, very good. On your saturated side, olive, okay. Obviously, omega-3 supplementation from high-quality sources. I have one called Omega Supreme. I'll put it down below. Avocado's fine as well. Good quality, extra virgin, organic. Olive oil as well, very good. And maybe a little bit of nuts or seeds if your inflammation's under control and you're feeling pretty good. And of course, you could always throw MCT oil there, which is kind of on the saturated. It's like kind of more of a fractionated coconut oil. It's where they're pulling out that C6, C8, C10, capric, caproic, caprylic, lauric acid. These are your C6 to C12 fatty acids, but they've been able to extract it. So it's going to be more in that liquid form. Normally, saturated fats are going to be more in that solid form like coconut oil, but MCT would kind of be also your extra exception for that. And of course, it's going to provide a lot of good support for ketones as well. Ketones are going to provide good fuel for your brain, good fuel for your body. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. Hope it makes a lot of sense and you feel comfortable and confident with all the intel. If you want to reach out down below, you can reach out to myself directly for a consult to get more support on the functional medicine side. I have staff and colleagues that are willing to help you and support you and kind of get down to business and figure out what is going on under the hood, root cause-wise. Okay, very good. Let me kind of dive into a couple of questions here, if you don't mind. All right, guys, hope you can see me now and hear me now. All right, let's dive into a couple of questions. If you're making organic pasture-raised soup, let me get this on screen here. If you're making organic pasture-raised chicken soup in your Instant Pot every week, gut issues, how much omega-3 do you need to balance all the omega-6 you're getting? I'm not worried about too much omega-6 from the chicken, as long as you're getting high-quality chickens, pasture-raised is better. They're eating bugs. They're kind of, on the pasture, so to speak. I think you're going to be fine. You don't really have to worry much about that at all, personally. It's when you're doing more of the factory farm stuff that I think you got to be a little bit more careful of. All right, I take about 3,000 milligrams of DHEA and 1,000 milligrams of EPA. Is that a good dose? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good dose. Definitely on the higher side of the DHEA for sure, but that's good for brain health. Yep, no problem with that. Please interview Sarah Aguilar, a British health anthropologist. She does a great take on keto and paleo and good fats. That's really cool. Definitely. I will keep an eye on that. What are your thoughts on exogenous ketones versus MCTs? Yeah, so exogenous ketones are also interesting. I mean, there's some cognitive benefits from that. If you have some neurological issues in your brain, may have a harder time accessing, typical glucose. I think there's some really good valid options there. I think if you're adding exogenous ketones and you're taking a bunch of sugar and crap in, it's probably not the best way to do it. But if you're maybe adding some exogenous ketones from a neurogenic aspect, trying to improve cognitive function, brain health, maybe you have some underlying Parkinson's or neurological issues going, but you're also making the diet changes that need to happen, I think that's fine. But if you're just eating a bunch of sugar, saying, hey, I'm going to throw in some of these ketones as well, probably not the best. Okay, really good. I'm getting a little bit of a lag in the video, guys. I'm not sure what's going on here today. Okay. If you're worried about how the fat's affecting your heart, what's the best test indicator that the amount of fats that you're eating is good for you? I mean, you can run a good lipid panel. That's fine, just to kind of see where your fats are at. You'll see the biggest driving indicator of heart or cardiovascular issues is going to be more from insulin and inflammation. So if you keep the insulin in check, you're not overdoing the carbs, the refined sugars, the processed junk, you keep an insulin in check, the fatty acid profile is more on the anti-inflammatory side, and the you're doing good omega-3s, and the saturated fats are not adding to any inflammation, like coconut wouldn't be adding to any inflammation, you should be good. You can also add in CRP, homocysteine, fibrinogen, D-dimer, make sure your clotting is good, make sure inflammation in the vasculature is also good as well. So you can take a peek at all those as well. But the biggest driving factors going to be inflammation and insulin. And again, insulin will also drive inflammation as well. Very good. Yeah, good omega-6 supplement. I mean, you can do any kind of high quality cod liver oil with good vitamin A is excellent. You just be careful if you're pregnant. And I think my omega-3 Supreme supplement's excellent. Problem with a lot of fish oils, if you have poor digestion, you may get the burps, right? So mine, I've added in some lipase in there to maximize your body's ability to digest it and break it down. Good. I think I answered a lot of the good questions here, guys. Very good. Very good. Excellent. So if you guys want to dive in deeper and reach out to myself, my staff, colleagues to kind of work on this, kind of dive in deeper, click down below. You'll be able to access the links to schedule with myself. And if you enjoy the content, give me a share with friends or family. Here to help. And I'll be back soon enough. Take care. Make sure you subscribe too. Take care, y'all.